Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Margaret Drinkwine. It's always, and I forgot my name tag. You know, it was hard to find parking this morning. I'm way down by Oak Hall, which, I said, good to get your steps in the morning, but I was running a few minutes later, so I apologize. Anyway, welcome, and it's lovely to hear everybody's voices, everybody chatting. I always think about that. We're developing our sunshine in our community in here, and to me, it's a big blessing to be part of this community. So welcome, everybody. There are announcements in the order of service. Feel free to take the insert with you. We do use the covers every week, so if you don't want the artwork, feel free to leave that behind. I believe that there may have been a mistake on the announcements that were being projected. The social responsibility Yulebach, the last Yulebach of the season, is today, so please plan on staying. And our candle today is lit in honor of Rosemary Heydrich, and there's an announcement about her memorial service in your order of service. And now I'll turn it over to Josh.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. It's nice to see everybody here. Happy New Year. We always like to welcome new guests and visitors at the beginning of our services, so do we have any members that have brought a visitor or perhaps have met a guest that you'd like to introduce this morning? Please. Great, well, welcome.
Hi, my name is Sydney, and I'm here visiting with the local
Wonderful, welcome. Please.
Hi, I'm Carol Fulton, and this is my friend Mary McClellan, who lives down the street.
Great, welcome.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I actually just moved to Kansas City for Christmas, so I'm not going to be here often.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Linda Jones, and I am a senior. But my friend is being along, Andrea Quinlan. She is a member from St. Louis who has lived in many years, has been here a few times, but it's been many years ago.
Great. Well, welcome. All right, well, welcome. Great, welcome.
I'm Kendyl, your inspire, and Barbara, and the little girl. We've been here 2.5 years ago.
Great, welcome. Any other visitors that would like to introduce themselves this morning? All right. Well, welcome again to each of you. It's wonderful to see some new faces as well as some long-time returning faces. So great to see you this morning. Once again, we do have our final Yule Bach following the service at 12:15 in Conover. If you're not able to join us, we'd still invite you to meet either myself or other members of the membership committee at the table in the lobby, so we might answer any questions that you could have about our community and the events that are ongoing throughout the week. Otherwise, you know to check the bulletin and the slides for announcements that are upcoming. And as a reminder, always, in the event of an emergency, beyond the 2 exits that we have in the back, we do have 2 on either side of the stage as well. So if you need those, they're here. And welcome again this morning, and enjoy the service.
As every day goes by, how can we close our eyes until we open up our hearts? We can learn to share and show how much we care right from the moment that we start. Seems like overnight we see the world in a different light. Somehow our innocence is lost. How can we walk away? 'Cause every single day we've got to help at any cost. We can bridge the distance, only we can make the difference. Don't you know that tears are not enough? If we can pull together, we can change the world forever. Heaven knows that tears are not enough. It's up to me and you to make the dream come true. It's time to take our message everywhere. We can bridge the distance, only we can make the difference. Don't you know the tears are not enough? If we can pull together, we can change the world forever. Heaven knows the tears are not enough. Heaven knows the tears are not enough.
Once again, good morning and welcome. Welcome to this hour of reflection and deepening connection. Welcome to a new year full of changes and possibilities in this congregation as well as in our nation and our world. By the end of 2017, this building will look and function much differently than it does today. By the end of 2017, who knows what shape the world will be taking. We gather to confront these challenges together, to find guidance and encouragement from one another as the days unfold. We gather also to affirm that which does not change, the enduring verities and values that give form to life and community, that make us who we are. We renew our allegiance to truth, to the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. We assert the demand for integrity in ourselves and in our leaders. We lift up the importance of compassion for all beings and the necessity of justice. We announce again the ancient human yearning to dwell together in peace. We honor the memory of those who have touched and blessed our lives. We rededicate our days to creative work and service and kindness to one another. We celebrate with gratitude the gifts of beauty, wisdom, and love. Though the pages fall from the calendar, these things do not change. They are our work as human beings in covenant community. Throughout the year now beginning, may we be loyal and loving to one another and faithful to the ideals of the world we seek to build and the people we hope to become. May the light of the chalice that we kindle now be to us a sign of our enduring dreams and our dedication, guiding us on our journey together.
Hello, good morning. My name is Rose Torrey, and I light this chalice for the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Well done, Rose. Thank you. Now I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we affirm again the covenant of our community. Together we say, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now, if you'll remain standing, we will join together in our opening hymn, which is not what's on the screen. Okay, good. It's actually, that's it. That's the one. Never mind that title. But this is a round. We're not quite ready to do it as a round because we're just learning it. So listen to Tom the first time through, and then we'll do it 3 times together.
By the waters of Babylon, we sat down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. By the waters of Babylon, we sat down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. By the waters of Babylon, we sat down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion. By the waters of Babylon, we sat down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, Zion.
So have a seat, but don't get too comfortable because I invite you now to turn to someone near you, and extra points if it's a person you didn't come in with, and double extra points if it's a young person. And I'm going to invite you to greet them and wish them Happy New Year, and then talk for a moment about this question. And the question is, what is the best thing that might happen to you or for you in the coming year? What's really good that might take? I think it's fabulous that nobody had to think very long to come up with something. That's wonderful. At this time, we are going to send our children out to begin their new year in their Sunday school classes with song.
Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. There he be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Brave to follow where the human spirit leads.
Our partner in generosity for the month of January is going to be Standing Up for Racial Justice, an organization of white allies seeking a more just society along racial lines here in Kansas City and across the country. But before we bring up our presenter for this morning, I want to point out that in your order of service is a new QRC code, and those of you who know how to do these things can use that with your smartphone to make a contribution right from your phone. So yeah, everything's up to date in Kansas City, I'm telling you. So give that a shot if you know how to do it. And in the meantime, this morning we have a representative from Standing Up for Racial Justice to tell us more about their work.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. My name is Alice Chamberlain, and I'm really grateful to be able to be with you guys this morning. As a person of faith, I think that communities of faith have a really important role to play in racial justice work, and your congregation has already really been a beacon of leadership here. So we're really excited for your support in our efforts with SURGE, which is Showing Up for Racial Justice Kansas City. We are a local network organizing white people for racial justice. After the events of Ferguson and other events across this country. Several of us were hearing a message loud and clear from many leaders of color here in Kansas City that there really needed to be a direct effort of white people engaging other white people in their communities around racial justice. And so after several months of discernment, we publicly launched a chapter here as part of the national network of showing up for racial justice in May of 2016, right here in this venue where we meet often. And part of our work is based on the premise that we believe white folks created the system of racism, and we have a responsibility to be dismantling it. And we believe that if we're ever going to build a true multiracial majority of people working for racial justice, a big part of that has to be white folks, especially in communities in Kansas City and across Missouri. And part of what some of our kind of core beliefs that really inform our practice and our work is, one, we believe that if racism is really a systemic issue, that all of us are implicated in that. Whether or not we see ourselves doing kind of direct acts of that, we all have work to do in racial justice and all need to be kind of actively cultivating that. We also believe that white folks have a really direct interest in dismantling racism. We believe that on some level racism hurts all of us, and we're not coming to this work out of shame or guilt or because we want to save people, but because we really all do have a direct interest in dismantling the system. And lastly, we believe we do need to be doing this work as white people in really direct, accountable relationships with people of color, and seek to do that through several local organizations here in Kansas City, like One Struggle KC. So briefly, we meet every third Monday of the month, several times here for mass meetings, bringing people together for training, for common discussions about how we can be, one, developing our own kind of personal awareness of how racism is playing out in our own lives and how we can be engaging other white people through our relationships, developing our systemic analysis of how racism is really playing out in institutions, communities, and in our public policy across both Kansas City and Missouri. And lastly, how can we be showing up more in solidarity as people of color are asking us to take greater and greater risks? So I don't think I need to tell you that in light of several events in 2016, we are feeling greater urgency about this kind of work. And so if you are a white person out there, if you're a person of color who is interested in trying to support work to move more white people towards racial justice, we really encourage you to not only support our work through the offering today, but to get involved. Because whether you've been doing anti-racism work for 20 years or you're just waking up to the idea that racism is real and pervasive and happening all the time, we all need to really be stepping up in this moment and showing up in greater ways and in ways that require more risk. So thank you all today for your time, and thanks to All Souls for this offering this month.
Now let's join together in the words of dedication. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society.
From Annie Dillard's Solar Eclipse. What you see in an eclipse is entirely different from what you know. It is especially different for those of us whose grasp of astronomy is so frail that given a flashlight, a grapefruit, 2 oranges, and 15 years, we still could not figure out which way to set the clocks for daylight savings time. Usually, it is a bit of a trick to keep your knowledge from blinding you. But during an eclipse, it is easy. What you see is so much more convincing than any wild-eyed theory you may know. I saw early in the morning the sun diminish against a backdrop of sky. I saw a circular piece of sky appear, suddenly detached, blackened, and backlighted. From nowhere it came and overlapped the sun. It did not look like the moon. It was enormous and black. If I had read that it was the moon, I could have seen it 100 times and never thought of the moon once. If, however, I had not read it was the moon, if, like most of the world's people throughout time, I had simply glanced up and seen this thing, then I doubtless would not have speculated much. I would have, like Emperor Louis of Bavaria in 840, died of fright on the spot. It looked like a lens cover, a lid of a pot. It materialized out of thin air, black and flat and sliding, outlined in flame. Seeing this black body was like seeing a mushroom cloud. If you were to glance out one day and see a row of mushroom clouds rising on the horizon, you would know at once that what you were seeing was remarkable, but was intrinsically not worth remarking. No use running to tell anyone. Significant as it was, it did not matter a whit. For what is significance? It is significance for people. No people, no significance. This is all I have to tell you. In the deeps are the violence and terror of which psychology has warned us. But if you ride these monsters deeper down, if you drop with them farther over the world's rim, you find what our sciences cannot locate or name, the substrate, the ocean or matrix or ether which buoys the rest, which gives goodness its power for good, evil its power for evil. The unified field, our complex and inexplicable caring for each other and for our life together here. This is given, not learned. People on all the hillsides, including myself, I think, screamed when the black body of the moon detached from the sky and rolled over the sun. But something else was happening at the same instant, and it was this, I believe, which made us scream. The second before the sun went out, we saw a wall of dark shadow come speeding at us. We no sooner saw it than it was upon us like thunder. It roared up the valley. It slammed our hill and knocked us out. It was the monstrous, swift shadow cone of the moon. I have since read that this wave of shadow moves 1,800 miles an hour. Language can give no sense of this sort of speed. 1,800 miles an hour. It was 195 miles wide. No end was in sight. You saw only the edge. It rolled at you across the land at 1,800 miles an hour, hauling darkness like plague behind it. Seeing it and knowing it was coming straight for you was like feeling a slug of anesthetic shoot up your arm. If you think fast, you may have time to think, soon it will hit my brain. You can feel the deadness race up your arm. You can feel the appalling, inhuman speed of your own blood. We saw the wall of shadow coming and screamed before it hit. Less than 2 minutes later, when the sun emerged, the trailing edge of the shadow cone sped away. It coursed down our hill and raced over the plain faster than the eye could believe. It swept over the plain and dropped over the planet's rim in a twinkling. It had clobbered us, and now it roared away. We blinked in the light. It was as though an enormous loping god in the sky had reached down and slapped the earth's face.
The Low Road by Marge Percy. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up. They can bust you. They can break your fingers. They can burn your brain with electricity, blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child, wall up your lover. They can do anything you can't stop them from doing. How can you stop them? Alone you can fight. You can refuse. You can take what revenge you can, but they roll over you. But two people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. Two people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. Three people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With four, you can play bridge and start an organization. With six, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. A dozen make a demonstration, 100 fill a hall, 1,000 have solidarity and your own newsletter, 10,000 power and your own paper, 100,000 your own media, 10 million your own country. It goes on, one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again after they said no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean, and each day you mean one more.
Traffic, huh? Traffic?
The sun on the meadow is summery one. The stag in the forest runs free. but gather together to greet the storm. Tomorrow belongs to me. The branch of the linden is leafy and green. The Rhine gives its God to the sea. But somewhere a glory awaits unseen. Tomorrow belongs to me. The babe in his cradle is closing his eyes. The blossom embraces the bee. But soon says a vesper, arise, arise. Tomorrow belongs to me. Oh, night showers the sign, your children are waited to see. The morning will come when the world is mine. Tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs to me.
Let us begin with an attempt to save ourselves and each other a great deal of headache by acknowledging that the election of Donald Trump is not the product of reason. Progressives of all political stripes can stand down and quit arguing about how anyone sensible could have or should have seen this coming. We really don't need to be savaging each other at this point, or for a long time to come. I'm not suggesting that the outcome of the election doesn't have an explanation. I absolutely think it does. It just seems to me that the most persuasive explanation is not about anybody's rational self-interest. As the pundits have argued, many of the people who are likely to suffer most from the policies that a Trump administration will pursue voted for him anyway. It seems to be driving a lot of folks crazy, trying to figure out why they would do that. What have we missed about why such a vote made sense to them? But I think the very formulation of that question contains our unseeing. Voting for Donald Trump didn't make sense. It felt good. I will even go so far as to confess that my own vote for Hillary, while I consider it entirely rationally defensible, was not cast in a spirit of thoughtful selection, but rather in excitement, defiance, and even spite. I suspect that many Trump voters felt much the same way. The point is that this election was not about logic. It was about feelings, which is perhaps the Achilles heel of democracy as a political system. People are not merely consumers of their rational self-interest. We are actually creatures of complex motivations, and that is going to be a key to understanding the next 4 years, and indeed, the human condition. It is also, I would argue, one of the most basic reasons for the existence of churches, so we are in the right place for this conversation. In his recent essay for The Guardian entitled "Welcome to the Age of Anger," Indian essayist and novelist Pankaj Mishra proposes that the historically recent globalization of the Enlightenment ideals of rationality, equality, and prosperity for individuals has set the stage for a rising wave of emotional reaction. He uses the term ressentiment, originated by Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, to describe the bitterness, distrust, envy, humiliation, and rage felt by those who are disconnected by modern freedoms from their assured place in a more structured and traditional social order. Mishra writes this: "In the hopeful years that followed the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the universal triumph of liberal capitalism and democracy seemed assured. Free markets and human rights would spread around the world and lift billions from poverty and oppression. In many ways, this dream has come true. We live in a vast, homogeneous global market, which is more literate, interconnected, and prosperous than at any other time in history. And yet, we find ourselves in an age of anger, with authoritarian leaders manipulating the cynicism and discontent of furious majorities. As Michael Ignatieff recently wrote, Enlightenment, humanism, and rationalism can no longer adequately explain the world we're living in." Mishra describes the Enlightenment view of the human person as a calculating subject whose natural desires and instincts are shaped by their ultimate motivation to pursue happiness and avoid pain. It holds the presumption that individuals are rational actors motivated by material self-interest, enraged when their desires are thwarted, and therefore likely to be appeased by their fulfillment. This simple view always neglected many factors ever present in human lives. The fear, for instance, of losing honor, dignity, and status. The distrust of change, the appeal of stability and familiarity. There was no place in it for the more complex drives, like vanity, fear of appearing vulnerable, the need to save face. Obsessed with material progress, the hyper-rationalists ignored the lure of resentment for the left behind and the tenacious pleasures of victimhood. Later in the essay, Mishra quotes de Tocqueville, who pointed out that people liberated from their old hierarchies want equality in freedom, and if they cannot get it, they still want it in slavery. To live in freedom, de Tocqueville warned, one must grow used to a life full of agitation, change, and danger. This kind of life, says Mishra, is barren of stability, security, identity, and honor, even when it overflows with material goods. In order to understand and survive the presidency of Donald Trump, We liberals and progressives, free thinkers and heirs of the Enlightenment commitment to reason, equality, and human freedom, are going to have to master the difficult proposition of thinking outside the box of our own logic. To defend ourselves against the dark arts of demagoguery and fascism, we will need to conjure with identity and honor, with vulnerability, nostalgia, security, and vanity. We need to acknowledge the power of the irrational in culture and in our fellow beings, and that means also in ourselves. I believe that we must recognize the appeal of the notion that tomorrow belongs to me in our own yearnings. Instead of considering it beneath us, we have to come to terms with its power. This implies, I think, that if we focus on the extent to which some people or groups have not benefited as much from the technological advancements and global economy of the past 5 or 6 decades, we are actually barking up the wrong tree. Ressentiment and the culture of anger are not about how well off people actually are or aren't. They're about how secure and respected people feel. Consider, for example, the military. People who have an explicit, highly defined and secure position in a system of cultivated and enforced respect will tolerate conditions of physical danger and hardship as an accepted part of that culture. Consider also that many people who voted for Trump were not among the most marginalized in actual economic terms, and Trump's proposals are in fact not likely to benefit them. The Enlightenment model of the individual free to pursue his or her rational self-interest is an incomplete account of human nature, and we are up against its limitations when we seek to understand the anger that energizes this cultural moment. So let me invite you to re-examine 3 of the most basic constituents of that model. Not, I hasten to add, for the purpose of discrediting it or discarding it because it is somehow responsible for getting us into this mess. Indeed, I think we are going to be needing it intensely for the coming years. And one of the first of the dark arts of totalitarianism is to persuade us that there is something morally deficient in the very notion of a free individual. Nevertheless, the concept of society as a voluntary agreement among autonomous people for their mutual benefit is a kind of just-so story, like Kipling's fanciful tales for children about how the elephant got its trunk. The truth is that we do not come into the world rational, or individual, or free. Rather, we are born into a matrix of emotion and constraint, constituted by other people in the form of family. We function as and are dependent upon groups long before we come to understand ourselves as individuals. We do not choose what language we will speak, what climate we will deal with, what gender roles or other social structures will be available to us. And it will require a tedious process of socialization by others to wean our infant selves from the imperative of our own impulsive desires and fears to understand the elegant capacity of our minds for logic and abstract thought, including the notion of equal justice. Thus, I would argue that the free and rational individual contemplated by the Enlightenment thinkers is not the essence of human existence, but an achievement of identity and integrity to which humanity aspires or doesn't. We must recognize the tenuousness of our assumption that everyone is free, rational, and individual, or that everyone should be or wants to be. Each of us is also and cannot help being a creature of limits, of emotional responses, and of unseverable connections. Now, it seems to me that the whole point of a church is all about our connections and our limitations, and the responses of heart and spirit that are more profound than logic. There is something admirable within us that wants honor more than safety, and the common good more than selfish gain, at least some of the time, fortunately. There is also within all of us the desire to matter, which in its less positive form manifests as a hunger to feel special and favored, to be more important and have more control than everyone else. This is a hunger that teachers of wisdom are forever trying to help us learn to become aware of and to satisfy at a healthier level than ego. But none of us is ever entirely free of it. It is perhaps part of what is meant by the concept of sin. So I'm speculating that to address the spiteful ressentiment roused by the global success of democracy, technology, and capitalism is necessarily a spiritual project. It will require a reframing of the human enterprise that incorporates group identities and the irrational fears and desires that have always been the shadow companions of our intellect. One of the deficiencies of rational Enlightenment humanism has been its implicit secularity. Diderot, that quintessential philosophe, graphically claimed that humanity would never be free until the last king has been strangled in the entrails of the last priest, equating the oppressiveness of dogmatic Christianity with that of absolute monarchy. Now, monarchy may be inherently despotic, but few would claim that we have no need for a state in any form. Certainly our nation's founders would not. And indeed, tyranny is the predictable sequel to anarchy. By the same token, I am persuaded that bad religion drives out no religion. The only sustainable alternative to superstition, tribalism, and ritual violence is what I would call good religion, with its intentional appeal to our better nature and higher ideals, our capacity for group identity and loyalty, and our attraction to beauty and wholeness. At the risk of sounding a bit like a broken record, none of this depends upon whether or not any of us finds meaning in the idea of a personified self-conscious God figure. Good religion has many theological options, as does religion in its destructive forms. What matters in the end, I submit, is our covenant promises and the communities of accountability that we build around those commitments. Ever since election night, I've been pondering several recurring questions, one of which is, what should the churches in Germany have done during Hitler's rise to power in the 1930s? As state-supported institutions, most of them made what we now consider appalling accommodations with the Nazi regime, particularly around dealing with the Jewish community. We remember with honor the exceptions, the French Huguenots of Le Chambon who hid thousands of Jews, and the Unitarian minister in Prague, Norbert Čapek, who spoke out against the Reich and perished in a concentration camp. I'm still wondering what made the difference, and whether or not history might have been otherwise had the mainline German churches not experience such a massive moral failure. What we do know is that it was the evangelical covenant churches that put up the most resistance. Those who had little investment in getting along with the government power and a high sense of commitment among their members to one another and to the subversive values of Christianity as they understood it. So here's what I think. The modern Enlightenment individual may have more choices and more material advantages than any human beings in the history of the species thus far. But we may be at the same time isolated, overwhelmed, and confused, plagued by a sense of failure to achieve our potential, as well as the loss of familiar privilege and a secure place in the world. I really hope, so deeply and fervently that I have given my vocational life to this effort, that here, together in this covenant community of memory and promise, we have created a framework that helps you and me and all of us to navigate the agitation, change, and danger that de Tocqueville once promised goes with freedom. Here in community, we are more than individuals. We are a congregation, a body, a breathing together conspiracy to change the world. And we are not utterly free, for we have given our loyalty to one another and our commitment to a vision of justice and right relations, of wholeness for the planet and creativity in our world, of continuing growth toward wisdom and maturity of spirit. Here in this place, my dearly beloved humanist brothers and sisters, week by week we share flowers and light candles. We commune with water and with bread. We toast to the trees and remember our beloved dead and dedicate babies and make rainbow bridges. We kindle chalices and sing songs together and do all those hokey ritual things because there is more to us than our rational minds, precious as they are. And if we do not feed those deeper, less reasoning needs, a healthy diet of ideals and hopes, and what is worthy of honor and our reverence, then the dark arts will have us when they rise. The black horizon came racing toward them so fast they had time only to cry out, Annie Dillard tells us. 1,800 miles an hour, the shadow cone of the moon slammed into them, and darkness was upon the land. 7.5 minutes later, in a total eclipse, the shadow speeds away just as breathlessly, as if God had reached out of the cosmos and slapped the earth's face. When it happens, you don't have time to think, but you have to know what's going on or you might just die of fright. We are about to enter the shadow cone of Donald Trump's presidency. I believe, I pray that this is not the twilight of our 2 centuries of democracy, prelude to another long night of tyranny and human misery. I hope we know too much these days to let that happen for very long. But they were pretty smart people in Germany 80 years ago, too. May we all endure to watch this shadow race away across the landscape as swiftly as it has come. In 1942, with the world engulfed in war brought on by Hitler's manic ambitions, the humanist Unitarian minister and scholar Charles H. Little wrote an anniversary hymn for his part-time congregation. Using a traditional and familiar tune, He lifted up the role of what he called the Church of the Free Spirit in sustaining human liberty and the light of reason through the covenant commitment and devotion of religious community. This seems like a good time to recall his words. Will you rise and sing with me? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. Stay near me. Speak my name. Oh, do not wander by a thought's span, heart's impulse, from the light we kindle here. You are my sole defender as I am yours in this precipitous night which over earth till common landmarks alter is falling without stars and bitter cold. We here have only our burning selves for shelter. Huddle against me. Give me your hand to hold. So might two travelers caught in mountain weather on a high slope and taken by the storm, desperate in the darkness, cling together under one cloak and breathe each other warm. Stay near me, spirit, perishable as bone, in no such winter can survive alone.
Bless your way.